They're trying so hard to get play of the game right now. Playing for play of the game mindset is a real problem. Exactly. What do you think the soldier's doing? He didn't account for anyone on the enemy team. He didn't recognize that his teammates were dead and out of position and not able to help him. And he's just like, ooh, I'm going to hit the flank and tack visor. It's going to be awesome. And then he slept, and now he's dead. But yeah, somehow Stubbed here has beaten the algorithm, has sacrificed to the Overwatch gods, and been on a climbing streak. So we'll see maybe some potential good habits that we're picking up on that's helping us with that climb, and then maybe some bad habits that we might have been able to ignore due to some quick victories that we want to make sure we iron out in order to maintain our rating. So yeah, with that in mind, average damage is a touch under 4K per 10, heals around, yeah, sounds pretty good. Paid with 4 seasons stuck in plat. It's like that scene in Harry Potter. It's like, I did my waiting. 4 seasons of it. In plat. But yeah, let's get into the VOD. Looking at Ana.
Attackers incoming.
Always a fan favorite. They've got a Bastion. Fun character to play against is Ana. Where's the Sleep Dart? Sleep Dart here, like, guarantees this death, I think. If it guarantees the Orisa. So, if you didn't know, Bastion can't be CC'd. Like, he can't be movement CC'd out of his turret form. So, like, you can't be booped by Lucio kind of thing. But if you sleep him, it makes moving him around a lot easier. So, making it easier for this Orisa to line up, guaranteeing that he's not going to dodge out of the way, guaranteeing the hit, basically, because he's in turret form. But even if he instantly swapped out of it, I think your Sleep Dart projectile would hit. I think I'm just going. But instead, we're just opting for damage, and yeah, they're able to full heal through that, and we almost get baited into doing Widow headshot there. Would have liked to see the Sleep Dart. Not a major thing, though. Got ourselves 50% ult charge for trouble. What's up, low bras? Alright, Zachary going for the trade. So, we're playing a bit of an awkward composition for Ana, right? So, we have a stable frontliner in the Orisa, but then we also have like these sort of flanking members in the Reaper and the Hog who we aren't able to easily keep up with. So when it comes to favored positioning, this is like a very common question I get. Is like, where should I position not knowing where my Orisa wants to play? Because like, this is not where Orisa wants to play, right? Orisa's either going to back up here and play corner like a normal person, or maybe like end up forced into here awkwardly, or maybe they might even try to hard hold this corner if they're getting aggressive kind of thing. So where does that leave us as Ana? We can't account for all of those things all at once. I think, honestly, like, your position currently is fine. Obviously, I'd rather not expose this angle, but the Orisa barrier is shielding us for now. But I think holding here would be good. If you're looking for more aggressive nades, holding here would be fine. Potentially even holding inside here would be okay, but then you'd risk the long rotation if your Orisa backs up. The biggest thing is you can basically ignore these members. I'm worried that you might be thinking about playing further up to try and benefit them. But basically, they're on their own saving Private Ryan mission right now. Tanks have been weird recently for both sides, yeah. So don't try to depend on this Hog or this Reaper realistically doing anything. You can think solely on your most anchored member here, your most predictable member here, which is going to be your Orisa, and a little bit your Soldier, but Soldier might also... Wait, speaking of Private Ryan, that's literally his name. I didn't even... Maybe subconsciously I noticed. But don't worry too much when you see flankers like this. Don't try to, like, catch up to these people over here. Don't force yourself onto high ground to try and help them specifically, those kinds of things. Just make sure you're keeping yourself safe and in control of your own movement and action. Even though you see your Hog dropping low, now he's coming into your LOS, now you heal him. This is good. Again, we're not really... Knowing they have a Widow especially, I'd really like to see you not exposing this angle. This is a very common mistake on this map particularly that backline members do. Your Soldier's probably going to be doing it as well. But all it takes is literally a step back, or if you're expecting more forward holding, like around this corner, you just take a step forward, hug this corner, maybe hug inside if you're feeling aggressive. This is better. Yeah, this is much better. The worry about this angle now is unfortunately the same kind of thing if the Widow peeks this angle above the shield, or grapples above the shield. So I think where you were was actually perfect. I think this little thing is not much, but it's the best you can kind of ask for at this section of the map. Your only other option would be like long rotate up to these high grounds here, maybe playing like back here, which Ana can do pretty much no problem. But then you would be giving up your potential to find like aggressive nades or easily reactable sleep darts. Oh, even footsteps close there. We're not sure exactly where she is. Pretty good nade. Okay, yep. Scary. We know to hide now. There's that grapple. Good. See how nice those little tiny pillars are? Like, everyone else doesn't need to think about this. Everyone else is just thinking about, okay, run at the enemy, shoot my guns at them. But you're the main target for this Widow, as you can probably feel at this moment. So using every little bit of natural cover, even using things like this tree potentially, if you like see the Widow grapple up and then you just like LOS behind the tree, even though it's not much, or like if it was like an enemy Roadhog walking up, you'd rather have this tree than nothing at all. So use any little bit of natural cover available to you. And you did that when there was a threat in front of you. Now we're pushing up a little bit because the Widow's dead. I hope that we're pushing up because the Widow's dead. So I don't want this to be like an autopilot thing where it's like, okay, I had to back up, so now I can push forward. That's only true if your threat has been adequately dealt with. And if your threat's like over here, for example, or your threat's untouchable by the enemy team, and things like that, if this Widow survived, it didn't get hit by the Roadhog, then this would not be true. You wouldn't be able to sort of like just go with the tide in and out. You would have to individually recognize the unique threat that Widow provides and uniquely respond to that in terms of your own position. But Widow's dead, so we're good. Aggressive nade, aggressive Lucio. I like how much we're going for damage. This is good. Big nade. You actually hit a massive nade for your Hog here, but he is refusing to LOS healing angles. But he's okay. Alright, again, ebb and flow here. Now that your threats are spawning, you know the Bastion's using his tank move right now. I would like to see you not in the middle of the street. Even little things like being back here, or if you're trying to LOS this Hog, maybe you even like go inside here. Maybe you try and kite back to this angle kind of thing. Get as much natural cover as possible. You are in the exact position, the very first location they're going to check if they were to round this corner, and that's not what we want to see. Lucio losing the 1v1 against the Baby Diva, unfortunately. Nice nade. Unfortunately, I think one of our ducks got eaten by a bubble there. Again, angle isolation. We can absolutely see this Orisa without exposing this angle. Let's go back to show that. So right here, good nade. Unfortunately, I think one of our ducks got eaten by a bubble, but that's fine. We react appropriately with the nade. We're thinking about using Nano for Orisa now. Obviously, you'd rather not expose... You don't need to, like, wrap around here. It's not like your Orisa's going to die this very second kind of thing. And honestly, like, if you are choosing to Nano and Orisa, it's probably going to be a pretty defensive Nano. It's here to capitalize on the fact that a lot of people are focusing your Orisa. So it's not a bad thing to Nano Orisa here. I think you potentially had a better target 2 centimeters to your left, but that's okay. But the biggest thing is we swung wide here without respecting our enemy threats. And because of that, we are the first person on the menu. We go to this Widow's POV. Who do you think she's going to be looking at? Of course. And then additionally, because we don't have natural cover, we don't have a lot of outplay potential for her. If this Winston were to dive us, we can't move him into predictable angles. Like if we were out here and he didn't see us when he jumped in, maybe it's an easier sleep start to hit, maybe it's an easier nade to hit, although we already hit him with the nade, and we never expose that Widow angle. Just like little things like that in terms of positioning. And from what I'm getting so far, I know we're only like 2 minutes into the VOD, what I'm getting so far from your positioning is like you're a little bit autopiloting, but you're still reading situations well. The problem is you're not reading specifics of the situation. You know when your team is pushing, you know when the enemy team is pushing, you know that when they use ultimates, I have to back up, you know that when the Widow peaks, you have to back up, these kinds of things, you know when the Widow dies, you can push forward. But you're not thinking it specifically about like, okay, the Widow's peaking from what angle? Okay, the Winston's using Primal, who's he targeting? These kinds of things. So you need to just push these a little step further and react a little bit, not react faster, but react by taking in more information, if that makes sense. Saw the Hog go down and wanted that presence? Absolutely. I think the presence is a good thing to try and snowball this opportunity and turn it on its head with this Nano and with the nade play that you hit on the Winston as well. The problem is just making sure you're not letting other things fall because of that. Specifically yourself.
Team up for special attack.
Alright, just making sure he has Seal Station available and he's just blind. Oh! Oh yeah, we're not afraid of this Widow at all. And to be fair, she hasn't hit a single headshot. Oh, ooh, nice movement. See how nice these little pillars are? These pillars are the best. Processing info mid-fight is a massive downside of mine. And the biggest thing there is the reason you're having trouble processing more information is because you're thinking too hard about singular information. So you're thinking too hard about the aggressive play you want to make instead of thinking about, oh shit, all these things might stop me from making that play work. Right? Nurse Joy with the raid. Thank you. Much love, Nurse Joy. Let's get a quick shout out. All right. So, what I was getting to. A big reason why you're not able to process new information mid-fight when there's a lot going on is because you're narrowed your focus to a singular thing that you want to do. And the hardest part about playing Overwatch at a reasonably high level, like we're here and now in Diamond, is that there's so many things that are going to stop us from doing what we want to do. If the enemy team has no idea what they're doing and everyone's just playing Call of Duty Simulator and just running around as 6 people, it's very hard for them to stop what you're doing, other than like individual outplays. But when a team starts playing a little bit together, starts understanding the same concepts that you're understanding, like the ebb and flow of a team fight, it becomes a lot easier for them to shut down your plans, especially when you're not the biggest of playmakers on the Ana. She's got a lot of playmaking potential, but you don't have a lot of tools to make sure those plans go your way, essentially. You don't have like a mobility, those kinds of things. So, instead, what this means is we need to reprioritize our focus. And I'm going to draw my favorite bullet point list of all time. The priority list. So actually, let's fly up to the great whiteboard in the sky. We're going to draw our priority list. And this is true of every single hero in the game, every role in the game, and it's going to be true going into Overwatch 2. So, here's your notes. 1. Your number 1 priority, don't die. Guess what you can't do when you're dead? Literally anything. So, number 1 priority is always going to be surviving. This is why peeking aggressively to get your nade off, but exposing yourself to the Widow is a bad thing, because you're ignoring your survival priority in order to make a play. So we need to prioritize the survival instincts. Number 2, we prioritize our team. We prioritize what our team is already doing rather than force a new situation that potentially only we can come up with. The greatest example I can think of is like when you see your ally Zarya hit a 6-man grab by the time their entire team's dead, right? And they've got a Rhine shield just blocking all their damage, and the grab does nothing. The grab was huge, but she wasn't thinking about how her team could help her follow up the grab. Similar thing for Ana, like when you went for this nano on the Orisa, could there have been a better teammate? We saw the Reaper. Could there have been a better moment, an opportunity? Maybe we capitalize better on the Winston jumping in. Things like that. How does our play best suit our team? And we're going to look for their availability, make sure they're not dead, and they're around, they're able to help in the team fight, help you with your game plan, and we just put a little bit more attention to them. Number 3, the enemy. What are they doing that either we can punish or that might get us punished? So, for example, you want to go aggressive and throw that nade on the enemy tank line, but then you see there's an enemy, Bastion running it down on the flank. Maybe you'd better use your cooldowns, like your sleep dart and your nade, to shut down his advances or potentially his feeding. And that's a much easier thing to exploit that doesn't potentially risk your own position or demand as many cooldowns, things like this. Another way of thinking about this is, again, what are they going to do that's going to shut down what I want to do? So even if you run in and nade the enemy backline, like what if your backline's getting dove by the enemy Winston and no one can help you? That's both your team and the enemy kind of getting in the way of your plans. And then number 4, our final priority on this list, getting play of the game, right? Or just making your play in general, right? Getting your biggest pop-off moment possible, doing the absolute most you can, bringing the absolute most amount of value to the table in this specific moment. But this numeration going down this list, I guess I should have done it in a single column here, but going down this list is very important to follow this list, right? So it's very important to prioritize survival over your team. And I'm sure you've heard this as a support player before, but it's not worth sacrificing your own life just to go save a teammate, right? It's especially not worth sacrificing your life to go and try and get play of the game if it's not going to mean a team fight win and like a map win at the end of the day. What if I really want to be hot on high ground? True. I guess this does work in the context of assuming you are trying to, win the game and improve as a player. But, everyone's goals are different. So, after all that, after you're able to survive, after you notice that your team is around, able to help you, and you're more focused on enabling their plays if they're already making them instead of forcing your own, you're paying more attention to the enemy and what they're going to do to shut you down. If there's too many players in the way, if there's someone on the enemy team feeding, that'd be easier to punish instead of forcing your own kind of play. Then You can do anything that was within your reach that doesn't hinder all these other areas. You can do whatever you want. You can run it down. You can sleep dart 5 people. You can nade into the sky, whatever it is you're trying to do. And you'll find more success because you'll have your team around you, and the enemy will be less available to shut you down. And, of course, you'll be alive, right? So instead of focusing solely on what you're doing right now, what you want to do all the time, what you want to do to get play of the game, to frag out, to get the biggest montage moment of your life, start trying to prioritize these other things. And you can start one at a time. Start thinking to yourself, okay, can I do this without dying? That's baby stuff, right? That's level 1, right? That's probably something you're already easily doing. But then start thinking to yourself, okay, when I go for this nade, is my team available to actually kill the targets I'm nading? Because I'm on it, right? I don't have the highest damage per second in the game. But anti-nade is a really good tool for securing kills. But who's going to be there to secure the kills? So is my team available? Next, think to yourself, okay, I'm going for a nade, but what is the enemy going to do in response to that nade? Are they going to put up barriers like, are they going to eat it with defense matrix? Are they going to block me off with Winston? Are they going to headshot me as Widow because I'm overexposing myself to find this nade? If no to all of those things, and as many things as you can predict, then go for it. Why not? But not until you can reach the level of like accounting for all of those things will you be able to make those plays consistently and for them to find consistent expected value. And the sad part is, unfortunately, because it's ranked and because you're playing with other human beings, even if you go through that perfectly every single time, it still won't work at least like half the time, probably more than half the time, because it's ranked. You know, you can't really depend on your teammates for anything. So don't let that discourage you, and don't let a lack of follow through or lack of value discourage you from still prioritizing the same things in the future. Because if you do it enough times and you're making big plays all the time, that's as much as your team can ask of you, assuming you're not hindering the other areas. It's kind of just not within your control if that leads to a team fight win or not. This is just the nature of a team game. So those are going to be those situations where it feels like just completely unwinnable because you're doing everything right, but it's still not working out, and that happens. But there's also going to be situations where you can kind of just coast by, and your team is doing everything for you, and you just need to do the bare minimum, which is just like surviving, and your team's carrying you through every single team fight. Again, in both those situations, it doesn't really feel good as a player. It doesn't feel really rewarding, but it's important to stay consistent in either of those. So just try to focus more on what's around you rather than just what you want to do at the end of the day. That's the note there. Do I allow anyone to play with me? I've been queuing pretty much with everyone recently. I've just been not enjoying solo queue. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, we're not playing comp today. I don't think. I don't have a ton of time, so I'm just gonna get my reviews in for the day, and I guess we'll see where we're at once we get through these VODs. But yeah, let's keep going. All right. Recognizing there's not much we can do to salvage this moment. Maybe get some extra ult charge. Nice attempt to punish some overextending tanks, but they've got defense matrix, of course. Shuffle with the resub. Thank you, thank you.
9 months of well-hydrated coaching. Thanks, Tika T.
My pleasure. Thank you for the resub. Welcome back to the Tika team. So now we're risking being. We've done all our jobs, right? We've recognized. Okay, let's go back. Let's go through that priority list in game here. We are definitely in a safe position. We recognize the Widow position, and we hide even further. We've prioritized survival instincts. Well done. Next, what's our team doing? Okay, well, until our team's really pushing here, I can pretty much heal everyone from where I am, so I'm gonna chill. Now I'm noticing my team's getting sound barriered in, which means I probably don't even need to heal them that much while this ultimate is being used, and maybe that means I can turn my attention sooner to that play of the game moment. Then, of course, what's the enemy team doing? Well, we noticed this Winston bubble, and we're still a little bit worried about that Widow. But now that we have our team moving forward, again, think about the sightline the Widow is offering. Well, she's not going to be offering it for much longer, it looks like. But the sightline the Widow's offering, there's quite literally like 1,000 HP now in the way. And I know there's no... Like, I had this argument in my head with someone on Twitter the other day. There's no smoke grenades or flashbangs in Overwatch, right? But this is the equivalent of that. And the equivalent of that just meaning they can't realistically throw damage down this way more than we would find value from throwing damage down this way. Because we have tanks in the front line, because we have sound barrier pushing forward, we have a lot of resources in their face that's preventing them from using the angle they were just holding. In addition to that, they are being hooked straight to the depths of hell by Roadhog here. So, based on that information, based on our team's position, based on what we see in terms of the ebb and flow of the team fight, our team pushing in with the ultimate pressure here, I would like to see you stepping up a little bit faster. So we go for the nade. But yeah, right here, now that we recognize, like, even from this angle, like, our tanks are still in a really good position to pressure where that Widow was initially positioned. We could swing all the way up here. We could even swing potentially like right here. This might be too aggressive, but we could probably get right to this corner and go for a deeper nade. The worry, if anything, would be if the enemy starts using ultimates to push us back post sound barrier, but that hasn't happened yet. And if we risk reacting too slow to this, then we're not going to have that playmaking potential. We're not realizing the end of the priority list fast enough, and we're missing that opportunity window outright. Am I in school? I am not in school. I'm just chilling. So yeah, we're still able to do a lot of healing. We're able to survive and focus on our team, but obviously our opportunities for play the game moments are a little bit less so because we're holding ourselves back too much. So this is good priority of those first two sort of bullet points, but we're not able to push further. And this isn't bad. This is definitely better than rushing to the end of the priority list. But what happens in situations like this is essentially what you're not going to be able to do in Overwatch 2, number one. But it's essentially like this is what coasting looks like as the support. If you're only able to fulfill the minimum of survival and healing your team kind of thing, and you're not able to shut down enemy plays with sleep darts or brig bashes or Lucio boops or whatever it is, and you're not able to make aggressive plays with your nade as Ana and things like that, then you're not going to have as much influence over the game, and you're not, especially not going to be able to carry games like this. And this is a very common moment where support players will feel like they've hit a plateau without feeling like they've done anything wrong. And again, it's not because you're doing anything wrong, it's that you're missing aggressive opportunities to do more things right. If that makes sense. My nade there was shallow, probably should have held it, but I saw two tanks and Orisa and Kobe'd it. Not a bad idea to Kobe it, honestly, at the time, but even now, like with your second nade, your second nade's like almost off cooldown now. How are you thinking about using it? Their D.Va's now out of mech. There's the Winston bubble still on cooldown. Oh, well, it's coming off at the same time. But basically, like, this is now your opportunity to, again, look for a more aggressive playmaking potential. But because of our far back position, because we've been locked into the sightlines of hard scoping down main, again, we're able to survive and prioritize our team, but we're not able to do more to carry this instance. And I'm worried that if we take too long, a little bit late on that nade, again, against a Winston, very good nade target, of course, try to react to his jump specifically. What you were reacting to was his target focus and not his jump at that moment, and then, unfortunately, he primaled right as you were thinking about launching your nade. Oh no! Okay, nice. Soldier's there with the wake-up call, unfortunately. Oh, we would love to be in that healing station. That's just good play from the enemy Winston. But yeah, slightly missed opportunity there. And I think if we were able to like nade a single target at the same time our Hog was finding that hook, we might have gotten a kill that snowballs into holding that point. Hey, that's I can't blame that soldier too much. That's every player in every single game, so you guys know the struggles. Alright, we hear the ult, voice line, beep line. Wait, is he trying to go over secret? Oh my god, you know what this is called? Prioritizing safety, our team, and now the enemy. We're not trying to make a play here. All we're doing is playing safe enough, keeping our team alive, and able to shut an enemy down without... Like, this isn't you 6-man nading the enemy backline so that we can dive them, right? This is you playing in a safe location that punishes an over-aggressive enemy. And unfortunately, he's already awake, I can tell. And hopefully we're able to get the follow-up. We're going to have to nade him, of course. And we're going to burn him down. Well done. You see, this is like a really obvious example, of course. So one, nice use of headphones here. Nice listening to the enemy voice lines and things like that. But this happens all the time in every rank, in every game. The enemy will absolutely feed and overextend and do something that doesn't make sense all the time. And if you're just there alive and well and your team's alive and well to punish it, that's usually a pretty good way to play the game. Unless, of course, you need to make aggressive plays to take space or things like that. This is not one of those moments. We don't need to go retake the payload right now. So we just chill and we punish. More people need to understand this concept, so well done showing this off. Your Lucio does not understand this concept. Lucio's thinking to himself, hey, their Bastion died, I can go make a solo play and get 6 kills. And of course he doesn't. Unfortunately, we are locked into a bit of an awkward location here, between a rock and a hard place, if you will. Thank you for the body block, Roadhog. Alright, using the forward pressure of our tanks to get out of that position, good. And we managed to walk away from that. I'm a little bit surprised. I would like to see a reset moment, but your team's not really granting you one, so you're doing good to keep up with them. We would love to take the high ground here, but our Orisa says no. We're going anyway, but yeah, we need to be able to anchor with our Orisa here. Unfortunately, like I said, on first point, Orisa is going to be your safest base of operations within this team composition. It's just like everyone on your team is thinking like, hey, there's more kills to be had. The play of the game is waiting for me in the enemy spawn. Like all these kinds of things that literally just make no sense. Even if your team were to push forward there and get like 1 or 2 kills, the most like beneficial outcome you get from that is 20 seconds off the clock. And the worst outcome possible is exactly what just happened in front of us, where 3 people die for no reason. Now we're burning attack visor. Like, this is like everything I'm talking about poorly executed. Like, they're trying so hard to get play of the game right now. Playing for play of the game mindset is a real problem. Exactly. What do you think the soldier's doing? He didn't account for anyone on the enemy team. He didn't recognize that his teammates were dead and out of position and not able to help him. And he's just like, ooh, I'm going to hit the flank and attack visor. It's going to be awesome. And then he slept, and now he's dead. There's no saving Private Ryan. And we probably feel pretty tilted at this moment. I would, for sure. And this is why it's important to remember that, like, even though all these things are happening in front of us, we recognize that we're still in control of only our own actions. So it's not about winning every situation. It's about doing everything we can to impact the situations we can impact. There's nothing you could have done for that soldier. There's nothing you could have done for your Lucio repeatedly feeding on cooldown. So don't try to fix those egregious errors. Just try to stay consistent in your own space and play for what makes sense. Even though your Orisa hasn't been taking a lot of beneficial space for you, you've been doing a good job anchoring with her. You're doing a good job staying a step behind her positionally. Again, like I said, there's still little things we could do better. There's still more we can do with our cooldowns, more we can do with our focus, things like that, our positions. But at least we're not playing for play of the game too often. I can fix them.
You're covered.
So, I want to take a breath here just to mention that I think there's very common archetype of 2 different types of players that are suffering from this problem. There's types of players, and you've done a good job of actually exemplifying a little bit of both sides. So there's the types of players like this Lucio who think they need to have the highest impact over the game and therefore rush to the end of the checklist too often and try to play the game, try to get the 6-man boop, try to get the one shot of the enemy Widow. And if it works out, they win the game. If it doesn't work out, they lose 500 SR over the next 3 games. So that's a bad. we could all recognize that's bad. What's equally bad is what I mentioned before, which is never getting through the entire checklist because you're waiting for too many perfect opportunities. Like I mentioned when we were trying to hold first point there on our retake, we were too scared of that Widow. We didn't recognize how much space our team was affording to us, and therefore we didn't put ourselves in a position to make a more aggressive play that potentially could have carried the team fight further. So don't lie on either end of that spectrum. Try as often as you can to gauge the specific moments and specific variables that are in play. The enemy Widow sightlines, the Winston jump cooldown, your Hog getting a hook, whatever it is that's in play at that moment, and let that add to the equation in your brain of deciding, okay, this is how I can push my aggression a little bit further, or, oh, I need to prioritize a little bit further back and play a little bit safer. That's all Overwatch is. That's all mid-fight is. At the end of the day, it's never going to be perfect. 1, because no one's a perfect player, no one has 2, no one has perfect teammates, and like so much random baloney happens in a game of Overwatch, right? So it's never going to be perfect. but you want to make sure you're consistent in your decision making. It's not about always, always, always rushing to the end and getting aggressive as possible, and it's never about always, always, always playing as safe as possible. You want to be able to judge when it's okay to push up, when you need to fall back. And yeah, exactly what you're saying there, Shuffle in chat. You have a good baseline now, and I think the way this game's been playing out up to this moment has led you into thinking that you need to play safer, need to play further back, because there's so many threats to you specifically. There's now a Doom, there's 2 dive tanks, there was a Widow earlier, there's a lot of things to worry about. And it's good to worry about those things, but then recognize when they're no longer in play, when they're no longer a threat to you, essentially, and then capitalize on that with as much aggressive playmaking as possible.
This will only hurt. You're powered up. Get in there.
Nano on the Hog. When we're nanoing tanks in general, so Nano is what I call a tempo ultimate. It's not a pulse bomb that sticks a target and instantly gets killed. It's not grab or shatter that instantly hits 6 people or instantly gets nothing, right? There's a certain way to get the most value out of what I call a tempo ultimate, or if you're familiar with fighting games, which I wish I was more familiar with fighting games because I make so many analogies, it's sort of like an install super. It's something that generates more value, but it's still used in practice to swing things into your favor in the instant. So what that means is putting this Nano on Hog instantly forces an aggressive moment from your team in order to get value out of that Nano. But it also means that the longer this Nano is in play, the easier it's going to be for the enemy team to react to it. So what I usually say about tempo ultimates, and we'll just say Nano from now on, what I'm usually going to say about Nano is that within the first 1.5 seconds of using this ultimate, you need to be finding an advantage. So when we're nanoing this Hog, we need to think to ourselves, what's going to happen within the next, or let's just say 2 seconds, because it sounds nicer. What's going to happen within the next 2 seconds of me hitting the Q button? And if the answer isn't, I'm going to save Hog's life with this Nano, or Hog's going to find space or a kill with this Nano, or I should say meaningful space or a kill with this Nano, then it's not worth the tempo play. So let's take a look again. We're not in a particularly aggressive position. The rest of our team, we're going to spend the next 2 seconds. One, like Hog, if Hog had like hooked this Winston and you're reacting to the hook on Winston, then Nano secures that kill almost guaranteed if Hog has ammo in his gun, right? If Hog is at 100 HP and Doomfist is trying to combo him, nanoing that Hog gets instant value by keeping him alive and potentially turns it on his head and actually kills the Doomfist instead. If we're in an aggressive position with something like our soldier over here, actually we have our Cassidy over here. If our Cassidy's over here, or if like we're ready to go aggressive with another member, if our Orissa's hitting a pole or something like that, it's expected that within 2 seconds we're able to push forward and capitalize on the disruption or multiple angles and potentially snowball that forward. But what's happening right now is you're hitting the NOS in our drag racing car before we've even begun hitting the gas. And this is exactly, if anyone's played Mario Kart, this is how you spin out when Lakitu's holding the little red-green light, right? This is how you spin out by trying to accelerate too quickly from a standstill position. So when I say a tempo ultimate, like Nano, it means you want to use it with tempo or to counter tempo. So to counter tempo, like I mentioned, if our Hog's about to die and they're trying to capitalize on that, that's the enemy's tempo that we're countering. So we push that back. And at best, we actually turn that into our favor, but at worst, that hopefully just resets everything to neutral, which is still good value if we're at disadvantage. Or if we're using it with tempo, if we have an advantage already because of our positions, because of our cooldown usage, because of comboing with other ultimates like Nano Blade or things like that, or nanoing a Ryan who's swinging into a Grav, that's obviously a play that's already in our favor, and Nano's just going to make sure they never get away. So try to keep that in mind when you're going for a Nano play. It's not that it's finding instant value, it's that it's affecting tempo instantly. And it can find instant value, like a defensive Nano obviously finds instant value, like we talked about, but being able to instantly capitalize on the Nano is the important part. Because what's happening now is, like, they're not only reacting to the Nano, they're reacting only to the Nano. And because of that, they can choose to deal with it however they want. If they're reacting to the Nano, but also, like, just imagine your Cassidy's over here high nooning, they have to like be like, oh shit, where do I put my defense matrix? Where do I put my bubble? Who do I try to primal as Winston? And maybe that panic causes them to scatter, makes them do less damage, makes them more isolated, leads to more kills for your team. Beautiful sleep darts, by the way.
You're going to.
Cassidy bit off a little bit more than he could chew on that flank.
Is approaching its destination.
Looks like we're able to hold here. I like this position a lot, by the way. This is the definition of strong angle isolation, staying farther away from that flank when you knew there were threats, because Cassidy went straight back to the spawn room from there. Alright, Hog is one by one fishing for kills, and it's working out. Oh man, this Lucio's not having a good game. That one's not really his fault either. It looked like he was in a relatively safe position.
I will put you here.
Your flicks have gotten very solid. Nice. Good to hear. Flicking, very important skill on Ana.
You're going to be okay.
Ooh, nice nade from the enemy Ana. Nice attempt there with your nade. Doesn't even need to find value. You're playing safe enough. You're playing with really good respect to the enemy team. So you're not overreacting to the fact that your Hog's going aggressive because your team was still purple. You're not pushing around this corner to get a more aggressive nade because the enemy still has an opportunity to punish you if you do. But now that you see these kills come through, now that you see your Hog popping off, now that you see the enemy team basically running and tucking tail, you can go more aggressive. And what's really important to know about this situation, and this is even more true on third points when you're on defense, when you've got the spawn in your favor as well, is like even if you get killed going aggressive right now, it's not that bad, right? So like even if you get killed, even if you don't trade out, like you try and push up here and you get like one healing dart in your Hog, and then the Hanzo or the Widow headshot you, you're still going to be back in your neutral position to help this expected teamfight zone where the payload is before they can push. Because at least if we do it within the next like 5 seconds or so, if we keep pushing until they're all spawned and pushing themselves, then of course it's a brand new teamfight. But at this moment, while we're in cleanup mode, it's actually like not that punishing to die, which is why it's fine to give up our safe positioning and try to find more value in this mode. Of course, it's best not to die, still, and it's best to be able to find aggressive value if you are going to die anyway, but just a little bit of added-on analogy.
You're powered up. Get in there.
I like that you reacted to the hook. Unfortunately, we didn't verify who he had hooked, so he didn't necessarily need this nano to get the kill on the Doomfist, but you're recognizing that this is tempo. Your Hog is in an aggressive location, he's using an aggressive cooldown, and we're using Nano not only to potentially get more value out of that position and cooldown, but to make it less of a gamble for Hog to be there in the first place. Nano is, don't forget, an also very strong defensive tool as well. The damage reduction, the burst healing that comes with it. People aren't going to want to focus this Hog, especially if he knows you're within LOS to heal him and he still has Vape available and all these kinds of things, let alone the fact that he also got a kill. So, I like this one more than our previous Nano. Again, ideally, we'd be able to recognize, we'd be in a better position to recognize who his hook target is and like what our expected Nano value aggressively would be. But still, that was good. Alright, forced into a little bit forward positioning because of the dragon, but that's okay. Very underutilized position, by the way. If we're planning on playing aggressive here, which it seems like our tanks want to, maybe not anymore, but if our tanks were like playing around here, I love this position as Ana. Being able to play near where it's this doorway, and then nade people are coming down here and likely holding shield forward for something like your Hog. Being able to back up across here without exposing too many sight lines, assuming your team doesn't give up like all of this before you can counter rotate this way. Very strong off angle there, that's relatively safe. Which our cast is basically trying to do right now, but he's taking it a bit too late and potentially getting punished for it. But now we're just backing up. They're using Nano themselves. And look how easy it was for your Hog to react. Okay, we're going to go back to our Hog's POV. Look how easy it is to react to this Doomfist getting nanoed, because Doomfist is the only one getting aggressive, because this is not a good tempo nano. This is just good luck, have fun Doomfist nano. He's punching across the map. After he gets punched, he gets pulled. After he gets pulled, he misses his slam. After he misses his slam, he tries again to double down on aggression when his team is literally around 2 corners right now. There's no chance for anyone to coordinate beyond this Doomfist and the fact that he has Nano on him. And so our Hog lines up the easiest hook known to man. He actually flies into it himself. Sure, he's not dying to it, but that's the exact definition of not finding value with an ultimate. Okay, there he goes again. He's doing his best. Another good example of a tempo nano there from your Lucio beat, actually. Lucio beat finds a lot of value. But if your team's all in spawn and the enemy team's all in spawn, the beat does nothing, right? But now, when both teams are engaged, when kills are going back and forth, when there's only 10 seconds left on the clock and panic is starting to ensue, this beat guarantees that, well, it doesn't necessarily guarantee, but leaves a very good chance that no one on your team will die and will allow you to get more aggressive with your current positions and punish the existing people in the team fight.
Tactical visor activated.
And look at that. We get all the space, which lets us use attack visor and get 4 kills. Round over. How do you improve nano timing? Because I feel like too many of mine are good luck have fun nanos. Realize, so if you're going for a combo nano, like if you're going for Nano Blade, so Nano Blade I'll call the exception, or potentially like Nano Tac Visor or Nano Combo with a big ult. Those can be the exception because those two ultimates alone, even without team-wide pressure, can cause a lot of havoc and find a lot of value, right? So that's something you can kind of think of the exception to the rule. But generally the rule is no different than going for an aggressive nade, making sure that there's follow-up available to your play. Sure, it's a nade, or the nano's targeted to a single teammate, so of course they're going to be the most important to be available, but it's also important that they're not the only threat in existence like this Doomfist was, and that your team is able to capitalize or collapse onto their opportunities. That's going to be the biggest thing. Just think of it the same way you would think about trying to find an aggressive nade. You're not going to put yourself... Get this off the screen. Let's imagine we're playing first point. And let's say our team is holding back here. And our team's expecting to fight right here. We're not going to put ourselves up here and go for a nade back here every single time, right? Unless maybe we've got like a Genji dashing from behind or like Echo and Doomfist collapsing onto them, right? Because that's not where our team's ready to reach. Our team's ready to reach right here from positions like this or wherever they are around here. So don't throw it beyond their reach. That's really as simple as it comes. When it comes to Nano, even if you're like, you see like a Reaper over here, I guess Reaper, again, like Reaper is one of those characters like a single bullet or a single shot from his shotguns can be a one-shot potential when he's nanoed. So maybe it's worth ignoring some of these rules. But let's imagine something like our Winston's jumping in. If our team is all the way back here, and Winston's like right here, looking to drop on people over here, it's probably not worth nanoing because he's probably just going to be forced out anyway. Because if he's the only threat in the middle of them, it's not going to matter if he has nano unless our team is ready to follow up. And granted, your Winston players in your games will probably still call for plays like this because they're going to be like, oh, I'm 80% to primal, nano gets me primal. That's always a good thing to do without thinking about timing or availability of their teammates. At the end of the day, there's not much you can do about people with that mentality, but understand that the expected value from a play like that is a lot lower than if your team was ready to collapse on the Nano Winston play. So it's just about reach of your teammates as a whole, not just the person you're interacting with. Think of it very similarly to how you would use an aggressive nade. Yeah, check where the team is at, exactly. But a lot more common of a tempo nano play that I'm sure you've all felt in your games is like, what if the enemy Roadhog gets a hook on one of us? And the reason why those are so almost guaranteed value is because A, you're already shutting down a disadvantage in itself. Like you're preventing a death. That's always good. But then you're actually capitalizing on things like if someone was in a position to get punished anyway, we're likely in a position to team fight. If we're not, you're not going to be like, if you and your Winston or whoever, let's go back to like, if you and your Cassidy are the last two people on cart, and there's 6 people from the enemy pushing it in here, and then your Cassidy gets hooked by a Roadhog, like you wouldn't nano it, right? Because you're obviously not going to do anything with that team fight. But if it's 6v6 instead, and then he gets unlucky hooked because he's on a flank for too long, and you can save him from that kill, we're probably in a position to take this fight. So that's why defensive nanos are usually almost guaranteed value, especially on tanks, because the burst healing is so powerful on tanks. But just in general, it's because of the reach of your teammates. The way I've been working on only nanoing when I see a kill opportunity. Again, it's hard to restrict yourself in that way because a big part of nanos is you can't see your target's POV all the time, right? Sometimes it's obvious that they have the reach. Like Genji, when he's blading, has very far reach, near infinite reach if he blades at a good time. So you don't need to worry about all these rules. But if you're seeing your Reaper like TP over here, and the team's fighting over here, you're not going to nano him post TP because there's nothing for him to hit right away. You're going to wait for him to collapse onto the group and then nano him when he has that instant kill opportunity like you're talking about. So yeah, exactly right. But even then, if it was just the two of you, unless you're planning some huge outplay versus 6 people, it's hard to justify that kind of play. All right, we spent a good time on this VOD. I think I want to wrap things up here, Stub. I don't want to feel like I'm scamming you out of half a VOD review, but I think we covered a lot of good stuff here, so I don't want to like just double down and rehash all the stuff we've already talked about. So I'll recap what we've talked about today. Did anyone know this building existed, by the way? What's over here? Anyway, biggest thing by far is we're getting stuck on both ends of the spectrum in terms of our playmaking potential. We're getting stuck going too aggressive with things like nades or potentially our positions, and we're overexposing ourselves to enemy threats like we saw with the Widow. It didn't get us punished very heavily this game, but if we consistently play like that, it will, in the next 10 games, like 1 or 2 of them out of those 10 will get us punished, and if that's one of those games where your impact decided the outcome of the game, you're going to feel pretty bad about giving up even a single death in those instances. So try to make that more consistent about deciding when you're going aggressive. At the same time, don't fall to the other end of the spectrum. Don't get locked into overly defensive play and limit your playmaking potential. The exception, I would say, is like when you're playing characters with little to no playmaking potential. So if you're playing something like Mercy and you're playing solely defensively, that's kind of what Mercy does. Of course, you're not going to like be like only healing and shield and damage boosting tanks and not like thinking about pocketing DPS and things like that. Like that's what your playmaking potential looks like on Mercy, but you're not going to be going for like backline pistol kills 24/7 either, kind of thing. So Ana has a lot more aggressive playmaking potential with her nade and with her sleep dart. So find those opportunities when it makes sense to find them, essentially. Don't wait too long to find them when you have the moments in front of you, but also don't force the moments yourself when there's other things around you could be paying attention to. And the step to improving both those sides of the coin are exactly the same. It's about understanding what specific things in the context of your games is triggering that response in your brain to tell you to go aggressive. If the response is just, I see juicy targets I want to nade, that's bad. If the response is just, I'm not going to do it until 3 out of 6 members are dead on the enemy team, that's also bad, because it doesn't matter if they're dead if they're out of cooldowns, or they're out of barriers, or they're out of mech as D.Va. These are opportunities that you can't ignore. So don't fall too far on either side there. Try to just understand the process you're going through as much as possible. If you ever get into a point where you're getting punished for being too aggressive, or you're noticing you're falling behind in team fights often, try to review those moments in your games and try to understand what specific things you either missed or were waiting like for perfect situations for. Other than that, just general position things. Make sure you're always prioritizing angle isolation. Like I said, we talked about a little bit about these little pillar things, and they came in handy very often, but we didn't rely on them until we felt we needed to. If we do that consistently, we're going to get caught off guard by things, by outplay potential, by enemy widows, way more often than if we just assume that these threats are going to be in existence. And we can assume that safely as long as we know what heroes the enemy's playing and understanding where they're likely to play. If we know they have a widow, okay, this sightline's dangerous, this sightline's dangerous. Don't expose ourselves to either of them if it takes it. But then as soon as we know where the widow is, oh, okay, the widow's over here, okay, I can go this way safely. You know, if the widow's over here, okay, I can go here safely. Just understanding the context updates with how those threats look in the field. Other than that, I think that was pretty much it. Your mechanics looked good. There were a few missed darts here and there, but I mean, everyone misses darts. Your sleep darts were really, really good. Your counterplay positioning was really, really good. And yeah, we talked a lot in depth about that nano play, but that was kind of just like 1 or 2 moments throughout the whole defense. Overall, I think your nanos were okay. Just about understanding tempo, which comes from all of our playmaking. Nano's no exception.